Hi there, welcome to another video here at Prof. Paul B. And today we'll be looking at form binding in the Spring Boot framework using Thymeleaf. So we're going to see that it's a very nice way of actually binding objects to our Thymeleaf forms. And for this lesson, if you want to follow along, you will need Eclipse and you will also need the Lombok framework, or I should say the Lombok plugin properly installed and configured to work with Eclipse. Okay, so let's get going. And well, we're going to look at create a table for our Avengers, and we're going to see that we're going to do everything from scratch. This is something that I've been doing in my class, but you should be able to follow along, no problem if you're not a member of my class. And we're also going to look at copy on write very briefly Arraylists, and to see that these are thread safe operations that allows, it's basically a version of Arraylist that is thread safe. Okay. And we're going to look at the dot operator, access object properties in Thymeleaf. And we're obviously going to look at some nice binding features that we can use in Thymeleaf. Okay. So let's continue on. So recall the model object. We're going to be using that today. And here's an example of in a controller class, we have a register user method that is the framework will be calling for requests to the /register resource. And notice we have a couple request parameters coming in, first name and last name, and we also have this model coming in as well. And what the model is basically a place for us to store retrieve values. That's really how we're actually going to use it. And it plays the basically the role of model in the MVC model view controller framework. And so we're going to be looking at that a little bit more. And we see that all attributes are stored as objects in the model. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And we're already going to start coding. This is my favorite part. So let's just look at the structure we're going to create. We're going to create a project called form binding. We're going to create a bean called Avenger and a controller called home controller. And we're going to have two templates. We're going to have an index and an add Avenger. So first I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead into Eclipse and start a new Spring Starter project. I'm going to call this, what did I call it? Form binding. Let's go ahead and call it the same thing. And I'm going to use Java 11, that's fine. And let's go ahead and change this to form binding. And to be consistent with the notes, I'm actually going to change this to Sheridan College. And I think everything else is going to remain the same. Let's go ahead and click on next. And here what we're going to add, we're obviously going to add Spring Web. And if I can see it, well, let's go ahead and add Thymeleaf. And we're going to add developer tools. We're going to add we're going to add Lombok. And finally, we are going to add web. Was hiding down here. We're going to add Spring Web. Okay, now I'm going to click on Finish. So let's go ahead and let's create the structure. I'm going to create a package called Beans, a package called Controllers, and let's start off from there. So let's go ahead and open up my packages, and I'm going to right click here. I'm going to do New Package, and I'm going to make sure that we put the .beans. I'm going to click on Finish. And I prefer viewing the packages as hierarchical, so I'm going to go ahead and change that package presentation to hierarchical. I kind of prefer it that way. And I'm going to create another package called Controllers. Okay. And so here we have our two packages, Beans and Controllers. And let's go ahead and see what's happening next. So I created this. I didn't create any templates yet. But let's go ahead and, okay, so that's what we're going to do. It's going to be a very simple application. We're going to enter our hero's name, and age, and power source, and we're actually going to have a table that's actually going to display these. So this is the form that you see when you click on the Add Avenger link down here. And then once you click add, you come back to the index page, which actually will display the listing in a table. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's keep going with this. Okay, let's start with our Avenger.java. Let's just take a look quickly. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 actually data fields. These 3 are part of each Avenger. I guess I could have made this one static. It makes a lot more sense to be static. But let's go ahead and try it. So in my beans, I'm going to right click, and I'm actually going to create that Avenger class. New class, Avenger. Whoops. There we go. With the V. And I'm going to click on finish. There's our Avenger class. And let's make this just a little bit bigger so we can all see. We don't really need the outline although yeah, we'll keep it there because we're going to see Lombok at work. So let's go ahead and create a couple of those data fields. So we also had deity. Who's a deity? Well, I think Thor is a deity, right? Training. I think Nebula and Gamora were trained extensively, I should say, by Thanos. Okay, so here's 4 other. There's more, and we could argue about what they are, but I think that serves its purpose. This is just for fun, right? This application is not going to be bought by Disney Studios. Let's go ahead and save that, and I'm actually going to add the @data Lombok annotation, and let's go ahead and import that. Like, if you don't have Lombok installed, then all you'd have to do is create these getters and setters. So you notice this is what Lombok does for us. If we look at the outline window, which you can actually get by clicking window, where is it again? Window, show view, sorry, and outline. Okay, so if you go there, you'll actually see the outline, and we see like get name, get age, set age. So we see all of these getters and setters have been created for us by the Lombok, library, if you will. It's not really a framework, but it's a library that actually adds some functionality. And if you don't have Lombok, like I say, all you have to do is create these getters and setters. Extremely important, the naming convention, or else it's not going to work. Okay, so there's our Avenger class, and now what we're going to do is, let's go back to our lesson here. So there's our Avenger. Okay, let's go ahead and create our controller. I'm going to call it home controller, and let's just take a look at it. We're going to have a data field, copy on write array list, Avenger list equals new copy on write array list, and we're just going to have a get mapping of the root. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to add the Avenger list to the model, and then we're going to return index. And we're going to see all this. We're going to see all this in action. But let's just get this coding done. And I'm not going to write all the comments. Those comments are for your information. But I'm actually going to go ahead and do the controller, and I'm going to do a new class in the controllers package. Make sure it's in the controllers package, and I'm going to call this home controller. And I'm going to leave everything else the same. So there's my class, and I don't necessarily want to see the outline at this point, and we got to make that a little bit bigger. So there's my home controller. So first thing I want to do is to make sure that the Spring framework knows that, and I'm running Spring. The Spring framework knows that this is a managed component and it's a controller. And let's go ahead and import the framework stereotype for that. And what we're going to do first is we're just going to create to specify Avenger in the diamond operator because it was assumed. And let's go ahead and hopefully the IDE. This is one thing I'm not too crazy about. Oh, notice we have 2, and Eclipse has a hard time managing when there's 2. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we can import the 1. And I did notice sometimes Eclipse does have a little bit of a hard time, and now we should be able to import. There we go. Now we can import the other one. And now let's go ahead and create our 1. I think we're just going to have 1 for now. So we're going to call this one go home, public string go home. And we're going to add a model. And notice here, and I'm actually going to add a get mapping. So at get mapping. And we're going to map things from root. And we're actually requesting that the framework give us a model. And let's go ahead and import that. Notice org.springframework.ui. We're going to import that. And we're also going to import the annotation. And now what we're going to do, it's not compiling because I'm not returning a string yet. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to do model.add_attribute. And remember, the attributes in the model are stored like a map. So it's like a string value pair. And the first string is the name within which we're actually going to access it. From which, I should say. Or using this name, we will be accessing the object. Okay, Avenger list. And here, let me just make this a little bit so we see a little bit more of our code. There we go. And Avenger list. And finally, what we're going to do is we're going to return index. Okay, so we don't have to specify index.html. Thymeleaf will know because we have the Thymeleaf dependency. Thymeleaf is the one that's actually going to be resolving the views, and it will actually tack on the .html. The file is not there yet, so this is not going to work. But let's go ahead and take it. So this is all we're going to do for our home controller for now. And let's go back to our lesson. So we did that. And here we see the copy on write array list. You can pause here if you want and read it. The only thing that I do want to say is it has the same methods that we're used to using an array list. And if you want to get more information, you can actually go to reference 6, which I'll show you at the end of the video. Okay. Here's our index.html. So here, this one has some interesting stuff. We're actually going to go and we're going to create this ourselves. You can take a look at this. You can pause and take a look. But let's go ahead and create this. And we're actually going to create this in our. Now I do need the projects window. So I'm going to expand to templates, right click, new, and I'm going to do other. And I'm going to do web and HTML file. And I'm going to call this index.html. And there we go. Here we go. And we want to make sure that we change the title. Doesn't look professional if we don't change titles. Thymeleaf attribute. It's a Thymeleaf attribute that's inside of the TR. So it's going to create a TR element, a row for each. Let's go ahead and write this out. TR each is equal to, and here we have Avenger. And I'm just going to space it out. You don't have to, but I kind of like it when I'm teaching something. In Avenger list. Avenger list. Okay, so there we have that. And I'm going to close that up. And what we're going to do is let's go ahead here and close up our TR. So now what this is going to do is the way you read this is for each Avenger, it's going to create an instance of Avenger in this variable Avenger list. And it's going to create one table row for each of these. And I had some students asking about this. And if we just go ahead here, I just want to show you. I'm sure you've probably seen the for each statement in regular Java, like say string. Oh, here we go. We have a string arg. So string arg in. My phone just thought I was asking for string args and was giving me. So did I say Google? I don't think I said Google. There we go. So our string arg in args. There we go. right? So you remember this, right? Now we're not going to worry about what the args is, but you probably remember this from your Java, when you were first learning Java. So what this does is this creates a variable arg for each element in the args string array. And here what we could do is we could just do sys out control space, and then we could actually just type in arg here. Okay, so I just wanted to show you, because I did have some students asking, I did have some students asking me, where did this Avenger come from? When we look here, some students were asking me, well, where does this Avenger come from when we're doing the TDs? And basically, here's what Thymeleaf is doing. Thymeleaf is creating a variable called Avenger, which is of type Avenger. The nice thing with Thymeleaf, we don't have to worry about casting and all that. Thymeleaf takes care of all of that messiness for us, so it's actually quite nice. So let me go ahead and continue. And here, Avenger, so now we know where this Avenger comes from. Thymeleaf is creating an instance of it for everyone that it finds in this Avenger list, and it's looping through it. But now what we want is we actually want to do the dot name. And now I'm actually going to close up this TD. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put in here. This is a nice thing with Thymeleaf. It's a natural templating engine, whereas as opposed to JSP, where JSP you can't really open a JSP file with a browser, but you can open a Thymeleaf marked up HTML file with a browser, and that's why it's quite nice. That's why they call it the natural. And here, what I'm putting a value in the TD Thor, and this will actually be displayed if we open it using the file system. So I'm going to do Option Command down and create a new one. Okay, so there we have it, and so we have our text for the Avenger.name, Avenger.age, and Avenger.powersource. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pause. I'm going to continue the. Oh, that's all we have for now. And well, let's go ahead and finish it. And I think that's it. Let's go ahead and try this. Let's try this out. So what I like to do is, right now in this workspace, I only have one project, but typically I'd like to right click on the project and make sure that's the one I'm running, and run as a Spring Boot app. And there we go. So we have our welcome to the Avengers database, add an Avenger to begin. We click on here, of course, we get the 404 error because we do not have a mapping to the add page in our home controller. Okay, so we're actually going to go ahead and fix that now. And we'll notice it's the request that the resource we are requesting is the /add page. And if we go back, we take a look at the source, we see that that is exactly what we're trying to do. So let's go ahead and fix that. So what we have to do, here's our home controller. What we have to do is we have to add another mapping, and let's do that right now. And we're going to send in the model. Remember we talked about the model, because we want to add. What we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be adding an instance of Avenger, a blank instance of Avenger that we will be binding to in our form in the add_avenger.html page. And we're going to take a look at that in a sec. So now let's go ahead and I'm going to do model. Okay, so now what we have to do is we actually have to, I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now we have to actually create this add_avenger.html. I'm going to pause. I'm going to copy and paste. I don't want to be typing the whole thing. You'll be able to pause. I will talk about it. You'll be able to pause the video at that point to copy along, and you should be copying. You should be creating your own projects as well. This is the best way to learn, but I'm just going to pause it for now, and I'm going to copy over the stuff. There we go. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at what's going on. Please do pause and copy this down. Make sure everything matches, because I'm sure if you've played around a little bit with any kind of Java and Thymeleaf, you'll know that it's very, very picky in terms of braces and whatnot. So go ahead and pause the video, type this out, and I'm going to talk about it. Okay, so here what we have is, here's our form and our add Avenger page. Notice the action of the pound or hashtag simply means that when the designer is opening this from the file system, the action is just going to do nothing and stay on the same page. But we have a th action. So when Thymeleaf, when this page is run dynamically through the local host, then the action will be changed to add Avenger. Okay, and the method is post. But here, the important thing here is notice we have th object. So we're telling Thymeleaf that there's an object, and that, remember when we actually remember when we got smaller again. Remember here, we actually added a new instance of Avenger right here to our model. And then we're sending it to add Avenger page. And in our add Avenger page, notice here we're setting the th object to be Avenger. Here we're creating a blank instance of Avenger. Maybe what we'll do is we'll actually add some stuff just to see this at work. But for now, let's continue looking at it. And we have 2 input fields. And notice we have the th field to be asterisk name, asterisk age. And here we have a select, and we're setting the field to be the power source. And we're creating with our th each, remember the same kind of syntax we saw before. Well, for each source, which is a string, and power sources, we're going to put the th value to be the source and the th text also be the source. So this is going to be creating options for us at runtime. And finally, we're just going to do our submit tag, and the value is add. And if we take a look at this, let's go ahead and run this and take a look at what it looks like. So I'm going to hit my local host and click on add Avenger. So we see everything went through okay. 0 is because this is a numeric field. But I'm not going to do anything else. If I click on add, it's not going to work because we did not. If we go back and take a look at the source code, we see that the add is going to be, remember the action, remember that th action, now the pure HTML, it's /add Avenger, method is post. And we'll notice that, remember here, let me go back to our code, make sure I keep this one so it's handy to access. So if we go back to our code here, we see that the th field is asterisk name, th field is asterisk age. So what Thymeleaf is doing, Thymeleaf is replacing the ID or creating ID and name attributes that match the name and age there. Okay, and we see that because we sent in a blank Avenger, the fields are not pre-populated. Let's take a look. Let's take a couple minutes just to, instead of doing this, let's create an instance of Avenger and call the getters and setters that Lombok created for us. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and we're going to add. So remember before we were sending in a new Avenger that had nothing set, and that's why our form showed up the way it is. Now we're actually creating an instance of Avenger and setting the name, age, and power source. So let's go ahead and rerun this. Make sure you always rerun. And yeah, I do want to save my changes. Absolutely. And we see Spring is booting up, which is a good thing. And let's go to localhost. So now if we click on Add Avenger, we see that the information that we did here, there we go, we can see everything, yep. So we see the nebula, the name, the age is 27, and we see the power source of technology. And here we see our options correspond to that array that we had in the Avenger class. Okay, so now we have that. Now if we click, what do you think is going to happen if we click on add? We're going to get our 404 because we're trying to do we're trying to access the /add Avenger resource, which currently has no mapping whatsoever. Comment that out for now. because that was just an example. I just wanted you to I wanted to show you how that form binding actually works. And we're just going to do new Avenger here again. And let's go ahead and create our post mapping. So here we go. We're going to do at post mapping. We're going to get a couple things coming in. We're going to get the model. Actually, I'm going to do this a little differently than in the notes. We don't need the model. We're going to do something slightly differently. But we're going to add at model attribute, and this is a new thing. And we're going to call this Avenger. Okay. So we're going to have to import a couple things here. First thing we're going to import is the post mapping. And now we're going to, oh, I forgot the type. That's my bad. You need a type when you're specifying at model attribute. We're going to have to tell Spring which class to invoke. And we're going to actually we're going to import. I'm going to do something interesting because notice in the notes, I actually add the model, add the Avenger list to the model and return index, but I can actually redirect to here. And I don't have to have that duplicated code. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's return. And we're going to redirect. So we're going to redirect to the root resource. Okay, so it's what? One line of code here, 2 lines of code here. A lot of stuff is happening under the hood. Let's just take a look at it. So we have our form. Oh, sorry, we have our form, and we're binding it to an object, and then on the action we're doing /add Avenger or post. We have our home controller. Here's our post mapping add Avenger, and we're telling the framework that there's a model attribute coming in, and we're going to be looking at that a little bit deeper in a second. But that attribute is of type Avenger. And here's the variable name we want to use it inside of our method. And we're just going to add it to that Avenger list. So let's go ahead and run this and cross our fingers. And let me just go ahead and click that. I always want to save everything before I launch, obviously. So, okay, so Spring booted up. So let's cross our fingers. So let's go ahead and add an Avenger. And I'm going to add Ant-Man. Let's say Ant-Man is 34. And definitely Ant-Man is using technology. And if I click on add, now we see that our, if we look at our page source, we see that it created the table because our Avenger list was no longer null or was no longer empty. And it created Ant-Man. And we can actually go ahead and create another Avenger. We could create Gamora, let's say. And how old is she? She doesn't look very old. Let's say she's 26. And it's definitely training. She had lots of training by Thanos. And if we click on add, now we see there's 2. Okay. So now what we will do is there's a lot happening here. Even just clicking, refreshing here, clicking on this add Avenger is bringing us to this page. Let's just look at that component. Just what's happening behind the scenes whenever the user clicks on Add Avenger, which is bringing us to the add page. So if we look here, I created a diagram, and here's what's happening. Right, is we're creating a blank instance of Avenger in our controller. We're adding it to the model, and we're forwarding that request to addavenger.html. In the addavenger.html, we use Thymeleaf to bind the object, the instance that we created here. We're binding it to the HTML form using the th object. And then once we've done that, we can actually bind each field to a input using the th field. And then we're also creating the drop down using the th each. So right now we're just strictly looking at the scenario where the user is clicking on, let me just put this so I can easily, so right now all we're looking at is this add Avenger. And we're going to see what's happening in this scenario. That's it in words. here it is. I decided to create a sequence diagram because there are so many components that are working together. The user clicks on Add Avenger. What's going to happen is Spring is going to look up what the resource handler is for that get mapping. And it happens to be our go to add method. And let's take a look at that go to add method. Here's our go to add. So that's what is going to happen. And we go back here, we see that now we're in our controller. It invokes that method. And our controller will create an instance of Avenger. It adds it to the model. And then what it does, it actually sends the model to the addavenger.html by way of the return value here. So it's telling Thymeleaf to go there, and the model is going to be, the Spring is taking care of adding the model so that Thymeleaf can access it within the HTML page as it does its templating thing. So now, and here's the important thing. So notice here in our Add Avenger page, we have this th object equals Avenger, and here we have the fields. And the important thing to remember is that Thymeleaf now is what's happening. It's calling the getters corresponding to each th field and populates the ID and name attributes on the input tags. And we saw that with the example. And next, we actually, then what it does, it loops through the power sources array and creates one option for each element. So we see here what the responsibilities of Spring, of the controller, of Thymeleaf, and finally what we didn't see is that Thymeleaf will send the pure HTML form back to the user. So that is, this is the pure HTML form. There's no more Thymeleaf markup whatsoever. So that's basically what happens when the user clicks on Add Avenger. So now let's add another Avenger. Let's add let's see, which Avenger could we add? Captain America. It happens to be many students' favorite, Captain America. And I don't know, let's say he's 36. And he has, not sure. I'm just going to put technology. Wasn't he subject to some kind of experiment? Anyway, so now we're going to look at the other way. When I click on add, what happens, right? What happens when I click on add? So let's go over here, and when I hit submit, we're telling Spring that we're expecting an instance back into our method using the @model attribute annotation. Spring is going to create an instance calling the zero argument constructor. It's going to call all the settings corresponding to names coming in. And again, the naming convention is extremely important. And then it's going to add the instance to the array list. So if we take a look at this from a diagram perspective, the user is going to click on submit. Spring is going to look for who handles this post mapping, and it's going to be our /add Avenger, and our add Avenger method. And now it's going to see that our add Avenger method, let's take a look at that again. Our add Avenger method is expecting a model attribute of type Avenger, and this is just the name we're going to be using inside the method. So Spring says, aha, oops, sorry about that. So Spring says, aha, I have to create an instance of this thing. And that's what it does. And that's why you need a zero argument constructor. If you don't have a zero argument constructor, it's not going to work. So you have a zero arg constructor. Spring is going to create the instance. Then it's going to invoke our method, passing in the newly created instance. And again, it's going to call all the setters. So the instance is going to be populated. And what our controller will do, it adds the instance to the array list. Then it adds the array list to the model, and then it sends it back to index.html. And then here's where Thymeleaf comes in. Thymeleaf was out of the picture the whole time, but now since we're going back to the view, Thymeleaf is actually going to use the array list to generate the table, and then it's going to send back the pure HTML back to the user. And here's that pure HTML that it sent back to the user. Again, there's no Thymeleaf markup in here whatsoever. It's just a very simple HTML, h1, div, table, and that's it. Here are the references. You can pause here. Oops, interesting. Sorry about that. So you could actually pause here and take a look at this. Okay. So anyway, thanks for watching, and hope you have a great day. And we'll see you next time.